Welcome back to another episode of the Casey Campbell podcast. Casey Campbell with you, of course. We are pleased to be joined. If you've heard a lot about this guy because I reference him all the time. It's Michael Markoch from Impact 89 FM. Of course, you may know him sometimes from covering Michigan State women's basketball, and he's done a lot of other things too. But the main thing you know him for is the NFL. And the thing is, if I have anything I need to know about the NFL, this guy knows it. How's it going, bud?
Good. And yeah, thanks for the kind words. I mean, yeah, I can't claim to know everything, but I do know quite a few things. It is definitely the sport I follow the most all year long. So happy to be here. Happy to talk.
We've done this. So we tried to do this earlier, but it took me a trip and then I didn't post this right away, and then I went to Costco, and then when I got back from Costco, it's the NFL world decided we'll just blow up. The biggest one, let's get the biggest one out of the way. Obviously, there's two massive stories today. Let's get to the biggest one of them all, though. Russell Wilson is going to the Broncos. Apparently, he was traded earlier this afternoon from Seattle to Denver, which is one of the things we actually discussed in the first take of this episode. But your reaction to that and to what Seattle is getting.
Yeah, I mean, wow. I mean, talk about a blockbuster. I mean, this is the largest trade and most significant trade I think we've seen in the NFL in quite some time, to have a quarterback of this magnitude, a Super Bowl winning quarterback at that, being traded from one team to another. I love it for Denver. We've talked about for basically all season long. They have a Super Bowl caliber roster. They just didn't have a Super Bowl caliber quarterback. They do now. And I think, what he's going to be able to do in that offense with Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton, Javonte Williams in the backfield, that defense that's really coming along, really young and has a lot of pieces. So it's going to be a really good team. I think Noah Fant is actually going to be a pretty significant loss for them. I'm interested to see how he does over in Seattle. But as we move on to the Seattle side, overall, I think this is about the best possible haul they could have gotten. I mean, sure, people can talk about what players they got in return, and they got Drew Lock back, who, Drew Lock will be a nice bridge quarterback for Seattle. I think he gets a fresh start with the Seahawks. Maybe they draft a quarterback at number 9. Maybe that's a place for Malik Willis, who we know needs a lot of time to develop in this league. They can bring him in, start Drew Lock, and stay afloat. There's still DK Metcalf. There's still Tyler Lockett. Now you bring in Noah Fant, who is one of the top tight ends in the entire league. You added a nice defensive tackle from Denver as well. And now you're armed with draft picks, 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, and a 5th-round pick. It's safe to say, no matter who Seattle wants quarterback-wise or whatever they want to do, they are armed with the picks to go up and get wherever they need to be in the draft, either this year or next year. So honestly, I think it's a pretty good win-win.
I'm just going to say this. The AFC is insane this year. It's going to be insane this year. And it also, the AFC West in particular, boy, there's a chance we could see all 4 of those teams make the playoffs this year.
Absolutely. To say all 4 is a stretch. It is really hard to get 4 teams into the playoffs, especially even with the added team, because there's only 3 wildcard spots. So to get an entire division into the playoffs, you're saying that all 3 of those teams are going to be wildcard teams. And it's going to be tough, because in that division, seeing each other twice a year, a lot of those teams, a lot of those quarterbacks, they're just going to start beating up on each other. I mean, you're going to have Mahomes, Wilson, and Herbert, who are just like, if they're going to beat each other, and eventually one of those records is going to drop. Probably one of these teams is going to underperform, but it's not necessarily because they underperform, but it's because their division is just so difficult. And as for a team like Vegas, I think Derek Carr is a fine quarterback, but now they have to think that we're just like one step behind, and it's going to be fascinating, because I mean, not only you're talking about the AFC West, you're talking about Josh Allen, you're talking about quarterbacks like Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, quarterbacks like that. So it's an absolute gauntlet, and it's going to be absolutely amazing to watch. This is going to be a playoff run unlike anything other.
Yeah. We'll get back to the AFC in just a minute, but let's talk about the other big story. Apparently the one that everybody forgot about now, because the Broncos decided to make some news of their own. But Aaron Rodgers is back in Green Bay.
Yeah, he is. And I think it's really good for Green Bay. I'm happy for them that they were able to get this done. I know that it's been a dramatic 2 years. It almost feels like we've been watching a sitcom take place of just the back and forth between Aaron and the Packers, and him saying he wants out, and then I'm saying, well, no, it's getting better. I didn't really say that. And then it's just like, they lose in the divisional round of the playoffs. And then it was like this offseason, where does Aaron want to go? And now we're finding out that he gets this new contract that, again, Aaron Rodgers claims he hasn't signed yet, but it to me, that just means he hasn't signed it yet. The terms are basically agreed to. And the biggest part about this deal is it's going to restructure their cap situation. So it's going to allow them to franchise tag Devontae Adams, to bring him back and hopefully work out a long-term deal with him to pair him and Aaron Rodgers together for the rest of Rodgers' career. So overall, job well done by the Packers. And, sorry for any of the fans of NFC North teams, because you thought he was going away and he's not going anywhere.
Nope. Green Bay is probably going to win the division again. So let's talk about, there's always other things. Let's kind of, I kind of prepared you for this, but I kind of got to spread a few other things around. Let's talk about the Raiders for a second. Where do you think they're at right now after they made the playoffs, made some significant gains, and everything that they went through last year with, getting a new coach, because after John Gruden left, and then you went to Rich Bisaccia, and then obviously, now that he's gone, and now Josh McDaniels comes in, where are the Raiders at?
I don't think the Raiders have to be very comfortable with where they are right now. I think they were. I mean, you're looking at a team who beat the Chargers in the last game of the season to steal the final playoff spot in the AFC. I don't think they were that far behind the Chargers in terms of that. I think the Chargers have a lot of issues of their own that, besides, Justin Herbert, they really have to work on as well. But now adding Russell Wilson to an already established roster in the AFC West, it's just going to make the road that much more difficult for the Raiders to possibly get into the playoffs. I mean, like we mentioned, there's only 7 spots. And if you're going to at least take 2 of those up in the AFC West, it's going to be hard to get a third team in there, especially with how good the AFC North is going to be, and with possibly how good the AFC East is going to be. And we don't know how the Colts are going to be next year. So it's a lot of moving pieces. And for a new head coach, you have a quarterback, and I think they're going to roll with Derek Carr. There's no other reason to expect them to do anything other. They definitely need to address wide receiver. They need some more receivers next year. They need to address the defensive side of the ball. And I still think, obviously O-line can always use work on any team. So I think for that to really, for them to really compete in this division that is just going to be incredibly difficult, I think that, they just need to stick to who they are, and they need to ride it out. And, hopefully Josh McDaniels can get the trains running.
Where are the Vikings at right now?
The Vikings, I think, they're in a semi-rebuild, as I like to call it. They're kind of in a no man's land place of, they want to compete. They want to believe that they can compete with the Packers at the divisional level, and that they can compete with some of these teams at a Super Bowl level. The fact is they're not there. I really like the roster. I think they have a nice defense. They have a lot of nice pieces, veterans, young pieces. They had one of the top defensive teams, I think, in the entire league last season. And on the offensive side of the ball, Dalvin Cook is probably a top 3 running back in the NFL. Justin Jefferson's a top 5 wide receiver. Adam Thielen is right there with him. He might be one of the best slot guys in the league behind Cooper Kupp. And you have Kirk Cousins, who's proven he can, win you football games. He's won a playoff game. He's won one on the road. I just, to me, is Kirk Cousins enough to get you over the top? But then again, the question comes in the season of how are you supposed to get any better? I don't really know if they can get better than Kirk Cousins right now, but they have a new head coach. They're going to have a new offensive identity, new general manager. They have a lot of questions that they have to answer, but right now they're still easily the second best team in the NFC North. So I think they could definitely be competing for a wild card spot in the fall with just how open the NFC is.
The reaction to the Calvin Ridley news.
A lot of people are, it's very, there's a divide, with how people can view it of, there's some people who, spend a lot of time, sports gambling, and, it's something that they enjoy and whatever, and they don't really see that there's a problem with it. I kind of come from the latter. I think there's a significant issue with this. I don't think this is something the league should take lightly. And it specifically says in the collective bargaining agreement that players cannot do this. And if they do this, the suspension is indefinite for at least a year. And, you can't just let him off because of, it was only this amount of money, which, wasn't really anything to him, or he never bet on the Falcons to lose, etc. These players, whether you're a rookie, whether you're a second year, whether you're a 10-year, whether you're Tom Brady and you're 22 years in the league, like, it doesn't matter. Every single offseason before the season starts, you have to sit down and you have to have the uncomfortable conversation that no player likes, but it's the conversation of, these are the things that you cannot do as a professional football player. And one of the things you cannot do is bet on NFL games. And he did it, and he's going to pay the price for it. And I think he'll learn from it, but I think the punishment has to fit the crime, because you can't have this getting out of hand in this league. You cannot.
Okay, so let's get into the fun stuff. You
Let's
just
do
got
it.
off a Twitter battle with talking about, obviously, context. You're from that's a Cavs sweatshirt you're wearing. You're from Cleveland.
I'm actually not. My dad is. I've grown up in Michigan my entire life, but my family's roots are all in Ohio, so it's very genuine for sure.
So let's talk about Baker Mayfield. We asked this question earlier. I'm going to ask this to you again, but because you've been talking to people about this all day, probably. Is he the answer?
I talk to people every day about it, and it's the most polarizing topic in the entire NFL, and it's not even close. So,
is Baker Mayfield the answer in Cleveland?
I mean, again, and I'll go with what I basically said earlier of, my real answer is probably I don't know, but being put on the spot and based on the information that I know now, I'm going to say the answer is yes, because Baker Mayfield was a top 5 quarterback in the pocket in 2020 in the final 10 games starting with the Cincinnati game when Odell Beckham Jr. got hurt. And you can look into it. You can read the tea leaves. You can say whatever you want about it. And then to start this season in 2021 against Kansas City in the first half that he played against Denver before he got hurt, Baker Mayfield was leading the league in completion percentage at over 80%. And he was I think he was second, or it was very close to the top in yards per attempt, which means he was completing a lot of passes and he was throwing the ball downfield and completing them. This wasn't like a dink and dunk type thing where he was just completing a lot of short passes. He was throwing the ball downfield, is being completed, and then he got hurt. And the injury significantly affected him. I mean, it's no secret. If you watched film from 2020 Baker Mayfield and you watch film from 2021, it looks like a completely different quarterback. He's simply a shell of himself. I think he can play up to that potential. And I'm really excited to see him this year in a make or break season that he knows, the team knows, the fans know, everybody knows this is a make or break year for Baker Mayfield. And I'm really excited to see how he handles it, because I think he can do really well.
What does Pittsburgh do with the quarterback position?
Well, I mean, if you're asking me to be, kind of impartial, I would say I hope they keep Mason Rudolph. But I just don't think that they would do that. I don't know how you could evaluate the play of Mason Rudolph in the past few years and tell me that he is ready for this, ready to start an entire season and do this and, compete in an AFC North that is it's an absolute logjam. I mean, you just have the Bengals who just went to the Super Bowl. You have the Ravens who are a perennial threat. They have Lamar Jackson, the most dynamic quarterback in the NFL. And then obviously we just talked about Baker and the Browns, who, despite whatever belief you have about Baker, the Browns have a top 3 roster in the entire league. So you have to find a way to compete with that. I think they might go young. They might draft someone, say Kenny Pickett from their backyard, right from the University of Pittsburgh. They might go for like a Malik Willis if he was there, a Desmond Ridder, Sam Howell, like any of those young quarterbacks that we're going to see in this draft. Maybe you roll with, similar to Seattle, maybe you roll with Mason Rudolph for a few games, let the rookie get his feet wet, and then you just kind of turn over the keys to the car. And, I don't know what they're going to do. The Steelers are one of those organizations, they move in silence. You don't really know what's going on behind the scenes in Pittsburgh, but they always seem to make the right decision. So
let's talk about the Bills for a second. Every year, it's always, especially in the last few years, we know how good they are. But the thing is, they can't beat one particular team, and that's, of course, the Chiefs.
Yes.
Where are the Bills at right now? Because I know with Cole Beasley, with him possibly moving on from the team. Where do you think the Bills are at right now?
I think the Bills are still a really, really, really good team. I don't think there's any, doubt about it. I think they're easily a contender right now in the AFC. I think they're a top 2 team in the AFC, regardless of whatever this Russell Wilson move does to Denver. Right now, they are still a top 2 team in the AFC. Their defense was really good this year, the number 1 scoring defense in the league. It wasn't good enough to beat Mahomes when it mattered most. That, like we mentioned, or like you just mentioned, it's been their sole focus now. This is their second straight offseason where Buffalo has to figure out how to beat the Kansas City Chiefs in the playoffs. They figured out how to beat them in the regular season. They haven't figured out how to go into Arrowhead and beat them in the playoffs. Maybe they need to play the Chiefs at home. Maybe they need to play them in Buffalo. Maybe that would change the tides. Maybe they put all their, chips in to get that number 1 seed and get home field advantage. I don't really know what they do. They definitely need pieces on the defensive side of the ball. Losing Tre'Davious White this season to an ACL tear, that was brutal. I mean, that's a top 5 corner, I think, in the entire NFL. So they just kind of got to stay the course, keep doing what they're doing. Eventually, it doesn't stay this way forever. At least you'd have to believe it doesn't, because, Josh Allen's that good. Eventually they're going to beat him one time. So,
yeah. Talk about the Jets for a second. I know they're an interesting team. Where are they at right now? It's like, are they going to get more wins?
I think so. I mean, to me, they're one of the teams. There's a lot of teams in the NFL I think are going to be better than they were last year. I think you look at a lot of the teams that didn't do very well last year, the Jaguars, the Lions, the Jets. I almost threw the Texans in there, but I think they're going to go the opposite direction. But like the Jets are one of those teams. I had fun watching the Jets late in the season last year. Zach Wilson was actually playing some pretty good football. That duel with Tom Brady, second to last week of the season, where they almost won that game. Like, that was a lot of fun to, watch the ending of that game. And I think they have some pieces. You have Zach Wilson at quarterback. You got Elijah Moore. You have Corey Davis. You have 2 running backs in the backfield that I know they really like. You got some young pieces on defense. You have the 4th overall pick in the draft that you're going to add another, nice player. So overall, I think they're going to improve. I mean, I think they won 4 games last season. 3 or 4. So I would like their range. I think they're a 5 to 6 win team. They're probably last in the AFC East, and that's not necessarily a knock on them. It's just the AFC East is a really good division. And so they're not better than any of those teams, and they're not going to beat a lot of them. So
how long do you think Matt Ryan is in Atlanta?
I mean, I could be bold and I could say no longer. I mean, there's potential he gets traded this offseason. I know there's been rumblings around the league that teams are, checking in on him. He could kind of be that Matt Stafford type. No matter how old he is, he can still play quarterback. He can still throw it around the yard and stuff like that. But I don't know. I mean, he's 30. I think he's 36, 37 years old. I wouldn't quote me on that. I'm not exactly sure, but
yeah.
He's got a really big contract right now, and that's kind of the issue. And I think that, he's going to have to stay in Atlanta at least to eat the salary. And then if he wants to move on late in his career, go to another team, chase a ring, I'll be to it. But I think for at least the next few years, he's going to hang around. And I think for Atlanta, it would be smart to get a young guy in the building right now to sit behind Matt Ryan for a few years. That way, when you're ready to move on, that young guy's got years of, rest and mental preparation to step into the starting role.
Okay. All right. We're going to have some fun here.
Okay.
I'm going to say a bunch of things, and you're going to tell me just really anything. It could be true or false. Could be fill in the blank. It could be anything.
Sure. Yep.
Because I just love hitting you on a bunch of stuff.
That's good.
The Saints will have a successful season if.
The Saints will have a successful season if they stay healthy. Overall, last season, they were not healthy. Their quarterback towards ACL, Jameis Winston, out for the rest of the year. They didn't have Michael Thomas all year because he had off-season ankle surgery. Michael Thomas is going to be coming back. That is a big deal in New Orleans. They had some injuries on defense. Their defense is arguably the best in the entire NFC. I think it might be the best in the entire NFC. Maybe San Francisco would have an argument with that, but I think they're right up there with the players that they have on that side of the ball. Taysom Hill has proven he can win you football games. Is he going to win you a Super Bowl? Absolutely not. Is he going to win you a playoff game? Probably not. but in a division that's kind of now as bad as the NFC South appears with Tom Brady leaving, I think the Saints can win this division if they can stay healthy, if Michael Thomas buys in, and they can get this offense, moving again. But I think yes, health is number one for New Orleans.
True or false, the Detroit Lions will win 6+ games.
Oh, that's tough. You know what? I'll say true. Because I think 6. I think 6 is a good number for them. They're going to get better. They're one of those teams. I really like their head coach. I think they have the perfect coach for this situation, to have a guy like Dan Campbell. And as I always said, when it comes to head coaches, it's not always about the X's and the O's, which, he's fine at, he can do. But at the same time, like, you need to have someone that your players feel like believes in them more than they believe in themselves. And that's something that I think Dan Campbell brings to the Lions. He believes in them. He believes in his team every single week. And even when they were winless through 12 weeks last season, he never quit. And their team never quit. They were so fun to watch. They just didn't really have the talent always to finish the job. I really like what they're building. I think they're still a couple off seasons away. They have the number 2 pick in the draft. And, maybe they trade that down, try to get more capital, or maybe they just take a really good player up there at number 2 overall. I don't think it would, it wouldn't bother me either way, whichever way they go. But I think they're finally on the right track for the first time in a long time. They had 3 wins last season. I think they can get to 6. So I will say true.
Okay. True or false, the Browns will make the playoffs?
Well, I'm going to say true. To me, it's just that is such a good roster. And the fact is, again, whatever opinion that you have on Baker Mayfield, like, it's fine. Like, however you want to evaluate it, like, that's fine. But this is a good enough team that they're going to be good enough to make the playoffs if Baker can stay healthy, if they can revamp the receiver room, if they can re-sign or what am I thinking of? Re-sign or, replace some key pieces on defense. This is a playoff roster. It's as simple as that. As a roster as a whole, they are better than Cincinnati. As a roster as a whole, they are better than Baltimore. Baltimore has some things that Cleveland does not. Cincinnati definitely has things that Cleveland does not. But as a whole roster, Cleveland is better than both of those teams. So I think, it may just be the hopeful fan in me, but yes, I believe Cleveland makes the playoffs next season.
The starter in Chicago will be
Justin Fields. It's Justin Fields. That their entire future and every decision that they could possibly make this offseason has to be made in mind of Justin Fields. Like, he is so important to that organization, and you gave up a lot of draft capital and you gave up years of this team's future to go up and get him, because he is your future. And I don't think there's any doubt in my mind he's going to be the week 1 starter, and hopefully they can put him in a situation for good success. I love Justin Fields. I'm never not going to like him. But at the same time, they have to do some things to make it around him, and they have to be able to win games. They have to get him O-line help for sure. They need to get him wide receivers. They need to re-sign pieces on the defense. Again, I could say that about almost any other NFL team, but them more than anything, they just need stability, and they need someone that can bring out the potential of Justin Fields.
True or false, Amon-Ra St. Brown will have a breakout season?
Didn't he just have one? Couldn't you consider his rookie season a breakout season? I'm going to say false, because I'm not going to consider it a breakout season, because I think last year was a breakout season. And I think Detroit's going to bring in a lot of key pieces. I think they're going to bring in more receivers on the outside. So I think Amon-Ra St. Brown's going to have a lot more help than he had last year. So I think he's going to have a very solid season. I will say that. I think he's going to be a very good receiver. I wouldn't go as far as say it's a breakout, because in my eyes, he's already broken out.
The team that will take a step back this year will be?
There are a lot of teams that take that step back. But I got to go with the Cincinnati Bengals. And it's not because I don't like the Cincinnati Bengals. I think they're a fine team. I just think this year they did get a bit lucky. They are very talented, but the Ravens had so many injuries. I mean, it almost wasn't fair. I mean, losing Marcus Peters, losing Marlon Humphrey, losing J.K. Dobbins, Rashad Bateman, their first round pick, missed half the season. Lamar didn't play after week 13. Like, the Ravens are going to be back next year and they're going to be primed to, come back. And same with, Baker Mayfield. He's going to be back. He's going to be healthy in Cleveland, and Cleveland's going to be ready to roll. Pittsburgh's going to be whatever they're going to be. They're still going to have a really good defense. You can't even deny that. And they've had the Ravens number the last 2 years. They've had the Ravens number, but like the Bengals have had their number lately too. So I just don't think the Bengals are going to have as good of a season next year. They have a first place schedule. They're going to have to play Buffalo. They're going to have to play the Chiefs. It's just not as easy of a road. So I think they may still be a playoff team, but I don't see them as a Super Bowl team.
The team that will take the step forward this year will be.
This is another really good one. Again, there are a lot of teams that I think might take that step forward and, become a really good team. But I think if I had to pick one, I would say to take a significant leap. I'll be boring. I'll say it's the Chargers. I think they're finally going to find a way into the playoffs. Because, a lot of people, when you think about the Chargers, Justin Herbert's so good, and it's all about him, and he is phenomenal. But that defense was really, really bad last season, and it's ultimately the reason that they weren't in the playoffs is they could not get a stop. And so I think they're going to do what it takes. They're going to shore up that defense in the draft and free agency. They're going to go all in. I think the Chargers are going to be a team that not only do I think the Chargers could win, could make the playoffs, I think they could win the whole division.
Yeah, so sure. Okay, we did this earlier. Let's do this again. Go ahead and pick every division winner. Pick the two teams that are going to make the Super Bowl and your Super Bowl champion.
Okay, well, let's start in the AFC because that's just kind of where the fun is. I would say in the AFC East, I like Buffalo still. I don't think there's a team that can really keep up with them in terms of all the talent that they have. They don't have, Josh Allen's the best player in that entire division. They have a really good coach. Buffalo's a really well-rounded team. I think they're one of the best teams in the entire league. So I'll give Buffalo the AFC East. In the West, I'm still going to go with the Chiefs. I did just talk about the Chargers. I do think the Chargers have a potential to win the AFC West, but until I see otherwise, and obviously Russell Wilson coming into Denver changes everything. But, it's Kansas City's division still until they really say otherwise or until, someone comes and takes the crown. I think Kansas City is going to be the team coming out of that division. AFC South, I like the Colts. I like the Colts this year. Didn't really quite work out. They had a lot of things that they were kind of a weird team this year, very up and down. But I like the Colts overall over the Titans. I think the Titans are a really solid team. But I just like the Colts just a little bit better. I'm interested to see what they do at quarterback. Did they keep Carson Wentz? Did they move on? Again, after what we saw today, I guess anything is possible. And then in the AFC North, I'm going to go with the Ravens. I think they're going to be back next season. They're going to be healthy. I think Lamar is going to be playing at an MVP type level. And I think they're going to win the division once again next season. Now, as for the NFC, let's go in the same order. NFC East, I think it's the Cowboys. That division is just very weak. It's not necessarily a division that's going to compete. The Cowboys are still by far the best team in that division. Now, if Washington gets a quarterback, I think things could change. I don't buy Philly running it back and having a very good season this year. I think they're going to be an okay team. I don't think they're going to be as good. So I'll take the Cowboys in the East. In the West, I'll take the Rams to repeat in that division. Especially after Russell Wilson's gone now. Trey Lance is going to be a rookie quarterback. We don't know what's going on in Arizona. I like the Rams to get that division as well. NFC South, I'm going to go with the Saints. I just think they have the best roster in that division. They have the best defense. They have continuity, a head coach. It's not going to be some sort of rebuild or learning this new system. They're very familiar with, who the guy in charge is going to be. So I will take New Orleans there. And then in the NFC North, I'm going to go with the Packers. There's no team that's going to compete with Rodgers and Adams this year. It's just not going to happen. So I'll take them. As for my two Super Bowl teams, I get burned on this a lot. I've picked it the last two seasons and it hasn't came true both times. I'll take the Packers again out of the NFC. I think one of these years it's going to go their way. I think there's only two teams really in the NFC that I think can do it. It's Green Bay and it's LA. And I think we never got to see Green Bay play LA this year. And so I think that would be a matchup. I mean, I almost feel you could pencil them into the NFC Championship game right now. I don't know if anyone's going to stand in their way. So I'll take Green Bay. And then in the AFC, I just talked about them. I'm actually going to take Buffalo this year. I think they're finally going to get over the hump. They're going to beat Kansas City. And Wilson in the AFC does change things. It certainly makes a difference. But I like Buffalo a lot. And I think they're going to benefit from not being in that division and being able to kind of have an easier path to the playoffs.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and you said my champion as well.
Yeah,
I will take the Bills over the Packers.
Okay. All right.
I'll take
also, who are the wild cards that make the playoffs? Forgot to ask that too.
The wild cards. Oof, I mean, that's okay.
Because it's fun.
Yeah, no, I get it. Man, I mean, this is tough. I do think, gosh, I'll start in the NFC with this one because the AFC is just so hard. But the NFC, I'll give it to the 49ers. I think they'll still probably be around and get one. I think they'll stay afloat with Trey Lance. I'll go with the Vikings. I think that they'll find a way to sneak in there. And I'll go with the Cardinals out of the NFC West as well. So I'll take 2 from the West, 1 from the North. And then AFC, I'll give it to Denver. I think they're an automatic playoff team. I think they're a Super Bowl contender right away. It's very shocking, right out of rip. I'll take Denver. And then, I mean, it comes down to a couple other teams. I think the Browns are going to sneak in there. Again, it could just be me being wishful or whatever. I think they're going to sneak in there. So then, I mean, now all of a sudden the AFC is going to come down to basically like 2 teams for 1 spot or 3 teams. I mean, you got the Patriots. You're going to have the Chargers. We're talking about the Bengals. You're talking about possibly the Titans. Like, oh my gosh, like there's only 7 slots and you can't fill them all. I'll give it to Cincinnati. I think they deserve that, at least from me, from how they played last season. But again, I think they're going to take a step back. I don't think they're going to be as good. And I'm probably dead wrong. I probably got all of them wrong. And again, sliding the Browns in there, no one's going to agree with that. But, it's my list. So I do as I want. But I'll take the Browns, the Bengals, and the Broncos in the AFC. And I'll take the Vikings, the 49ers, and the Cardinals in the NFC.
One thing you will not be doing, you will not stop arguing with Browns fans over stupid stuff.
That is hard because Browns Twitter is an interesting place. It's fun, but it's very, very interesting. So, for sure.
Patriots Twitter should be interesting. Patriots Twitter. Oh, any NFL team is interesting.
Yeah.
The Browns are the Browns.
Browns are the Browns. That is true.
Yes, it is. Yes, they are. All right, Michael Markoch, thank you so much. And we'll have to check back in with you once, I don't know, we'll get your reaction to all this free agent stuff because I know how much you love talking about this league. So anything NFL, you know where to go to.